We thought about you today, Brady, when we saw that Aaron Rodgers was getting rid of dairy. He's not eating cheese. Tom Brady has a cookbook now. What's going on with today's NFL quarterbacks?
Well, Dan, first off, thanks for having me on. But I think what you're seeing is, look, these are two of the all-time greats, right? They're going to be future Hall of Famers, at least in my opinion. And I would say that at this point, everyone's trying to find their little advantage that they can. And for a quarterback, reducing inflammation in your body is pretty important because, a lot of times you're the one taking the hits. You're not necessarily delivering them. So when you look at, for example, a player like Cam Newton, who I heard you guys talking about earlier, he still has the ability to kind of deliver hits when at least he's running the football. Mm-hmm. So he's not really facing as big of an impact as more of your prototypical pocket passes are. So, the ability to feel better after a game, even if it's the smallest margin, will make a difference. So, cheese and those sorts of things do create more inflammation in the body, so it can help you feel better, especially later on in the season when those games matter the most.
Did anybody ever discourage you from getting too big, your arms too big?
Oh, yeah. Actually, when I was coming out in the draft and John Gruden was the head coach at Tampa, he's famous for making these videos, right? These cut-up videos he's always going on TV with quarterbacks for. Well, we were sitting in Charlie Weiss's office, and he's going through, and he put up a picture of me from the combine. And obviously, my dad was a Marine, right? So he had me working out at a young age. I was eating Total and Product 19 by the time I was 4. So yeah, I like to work out, and I worked hard. So I think it was part genetics, part the fact that I probably ate a pretty decent diet. So I tend to look a little bit muscle-bound in my photo, and he's kind of looking at me going, "What are you trying to do here, man? Trying to get a little more on your traps, a little more on your biceps?" He's like, "I don't want my quarterbacks to look like this." And then he flipped to a picture of Jamarcus Russell from the combine, his skivvies. And he goes, "Well, I don't want you to look like this either." And then, ironically enough, he flipped to a photo of Charlie Fry, who at the time was a quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. And I said, "This is what a quarterback's supposed to look like. A guy like you just see it every day. You like to go out and have a beer with." Because you need to look more like this guy. And ironically enough, I ended up getting drafted by Cleveland, and they ended up trading Charlie in the second week that year. So it was a little bit weird, but that was kind of the perception I think a lot of head coaches have, especially a lot of the West Coast offense style of coaches.
Do you have to be in great shape to be a great quarterback?
As far as physical physique, I don't think that necessarily matters that much. I do think you have to be in good cardiovascular shape because when you have to scramble, when you have to run around or move in the pocket and do the types of things you have to do, and then all of a sudden come back and call a play in the huddle, it can be difficult at times. So you've got to at least be in a good cardiovascular shape to be able to come back and spit the play out so you can just say it once. I mean, if you have to go over it again and again and again because you're out of breath, you're only wasting time on the play clock.
What's on the NFL training tables? Like, do they put bad food out there?
Yeah, there'll always be some bad food. I mean, it depends on where you're at. Certain days of the week, they'll have a bunch of fried food and things like that, which again isn't good for you. It causes more inflammation in the body. I mean, I remember when we were in Denver, we went on that run where we actually ended up winning the AFC West with Tim and all that. We used to have these just ridiculously greasy steak burgers every Friday before we'd head out on our away games or 2 days ahead of time. But that was our tradition because once we started, I think it was called like Freddy's steak burgers. And we were just pounding these triple stacked burgers just because we did it and we started a streak and then everyone was doing it. And our nutritionist just kind of kept shaking his head, but he had to keep bringing it in because superstition superseded any sort of diet that he was going to put out in front of us at that point.
Do you think that Tebow was too in shape, too jacked?
No, not at all. I mean, I think a lot of people look at guys who are more muscle-bound, and they tend to think that they're not as flexible. But that's where mobility comes into play. I mean, a lot of times quarterbacks can still be muscle-bound and still have the mobility to be able to have a throwing motion and all that is efficient and has the proper biomechanics. I mean, I just think for him, it was a mixture of not necessarily developing, I think, mentally with some things that are happening out in the field and not really having enough time to shore up his throwing motion. It's really hard to change a throwing motion at that point in time in your life and in your career to really try to tighten things up and make a huge change.
He's Brady Quinn, Fox College football analyst, also NFL and Fox analyst. But let me go back to Tebow. How can you be one of the greatest college quarterbacks of all time, but you can't throw the football in the NFL.
Well, two completely different games. I mean, to me, the NFL is still a pocket passing game. I know we're starting to see quarterbacks become more mobile, but that's in part because the defenses are starting to become more and more athletic and faster, so the quarterbacks have to. But if you look at the way the game's set up, especially the rules, right, in particular pass interference, where you get the advantages of yardage as opposed to in college where it's, first down and it's first, and you get the 15 yards tacked on top of it. So it's still a pocket passing league to me. And I guess in that case, I think you're looking at the style of offense. The hash marks are different. So if you're making completions into the boundary in college, it's a lot easier than throwing into the boundary in the NFL because the hashes are much more narrow. It's a longer throw. And on top of it, there's a running element of things that I think comes into play that it's really hard to be able to have a mobile quarterback in the NFL last through 16 games throughout the season because the hits are that much more ferocious. And it's just harder to endure that style of play for that long of time.
While I have you and you cover college football, I'm curious what you think of what Jim Harbaugh is doing here in the offseason, tweaking everybody.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's trying to take advantage of every opportunity he can get to try to get down in the South and recruit some of the talent out there. But I think Nick Saban has brought us some interesting points that this is kind of a gray area with a lot of these satellite camps. And at this juncture, I mean, there could be some things that kind of maybe go under the radar that could be recruiting violations. Because this is something that's kind of newer, at least, and I think we've seen that maybe in the past few days. But in the end, I think they'll figure out a way of governing it all. I think it allows high school athletes more of an opportunity to have a chance to go play for a school like Michigan, a big program up north, where otherwise they might not have the exposure that these coaches aren't necessarily able to come down to some of these different satellite camps and meet these kids face to face. So I think it's all in the best. It should be all in the best interest of the athlete at this point, and I think they just have to do a better job of figuring out how to govern it.
Would you rather play for Nick Saban or Jim Harbaugh?
I don't know. It's tough. I mean, Nick Saban has the championship, so I think you probably have to go in that direction, at least at this point, but I think you'd have much more fun with Jim Harbaugh. But I guess looking at it, too, maybe I'll change my mind because, Harbaugh's got more of the NFL pedigree, at least from when he was there and the success he had, and he was a former quarterback who had a lot of success as well. So maybe he'd be able to see more eye to eye with you as a player. So as much as it pains me to say, because I really wouldn't want to play for either. I'm a Notre Dame guy, but I'd have to maybe say Harbaugh in this case.
Good to talk to you, Brady, as always.
Always fun. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Brady Quinn.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.